Welcome to my little tribe of Philodendron hastatum. I have 3 different versions that I have growing here, and I've had Philodendron hastatum now for about 4, maybe actually going on 5 years, and then I recently got 2 new ones within the last year. So I have this Philodendron hastatum, which has this kind of triangular spear-like shape leaf that is a little bit more like wider, and then I have another one that's a little bit more narrow leaf, which I'm not quite sure if these are different variations, different kind of ontogeny, meaning as the leaf gets more mature and older, it actually just starts developing a different kind of shape, or if perhaps that this is just a type of form that you'd find, or another kind of cultivated variety. However, these are native to Brazil, and these are actually on the endangered species list, believe it or not, because I think you could actually find them pretty readily within the houseplant market. They're not like super rare, so you could get your hands on them, as I have with all these 3. But yes, it's basically the area in Brazil that this plant is native to is that it's just like losing habitat really readily, which I think is like an important thing for us to realize, like in the houseplant market, that, you know, in some cases we have maybe a play that we could do in being able to help make these species persist. So if you could see, what I like about these particular plants is that they're not really dark green. They have this kind of like bluish, grayish, silvery hue, which I think makes this really unique in the houseplant market. This is typically a color that you would actually find a little bit more in succulent varieties. So finding it on a more foliage-based variety I think is pretty cool. So since I have 3 of these, I just want to tell you the different kind of growing light conditions that I have this in. This one you could see is a little bit more of a vining plant. I'm sure it could kind of run along the ground, or if you trellis it or you put it up on a sphagnum pole, it would be super happy with that, especially because it has these little aerial roots that are sticking out. And as I mentioned, this is about 4 years of growth, and I'm growing it in pretty indirect light. This is actually about 4 to 5 feet away from a northeast facing window in my kitchen. And these 2 are actually growing under, not even directly under grow lights, but on my desk, pretty much 6 or 7 feet away from a southwest facing window. And they're all growing exceptionally well, and they also are putting out some new leaves, which I'm super excited about. As far as watering goes, these are hemiepiphytic. So that means that they spend part of their life actually growing on something else. So maybe a tree, maybe a log, maybe some stones. And it has a pretty extensive root system, which again, for an epiphyte, they usually don't have extensive root systems, but for a hemiepiphyte, they have a little bit better of a root system and could handle growing in a little bit more of moist soil. So I wouldn't be too upset, if you will, if you're like, if you overwater this. Just make sure you don't overwater it too much. You could have a little bit more of a well-draining mix, but most of mine have a little bit of a heavier, peatier mix because, like I said, these don't mind having a little bit of moisture in their soil, and they also don't mind drying out so much. As far as these plants go, they do grow in kind of a tropical rainforest, so they would probably prefer a little bit more humidity, although I'm growing mine in moderate humidity. I'm not growing them in any kind of like terrarium conditions, and they're doing just fine. Like I said, really wonderful growth. And I think if I actually was growing this on a sphagnum pole, the leaves would probably get much larger, which is wonderful. And fertilizing, I'd say you could stick with a balanced fertilizer. If you're going the synthetic route, maybe 20-20-20, cutting it by half and doing it on a monthly basis. Or of course, you could always go with an organic fertilizer. I like to switch off from synthetic and organic just so my plant is getting like a full meal of nutrients and micronutrients. Otherwise, I've had no problems with these, growing them for 4 years, these for 1.5 years, and I've had no pest pressures whatsoever. So if you're able to find this plant, definitely get it from a certified grower, and just know that you're probably doing a little bit of your part. Even though that these plants are not growing in situ in the countries that they're from, we are growing them ex situ outside the countries that they're from, and preserving their genetic structure as well, just being in the house plant world and growing plants that we appreciate and love.